Hi, I'm Alan.
Yeah, I'm up
Jenny,
front.
how are you? Here, do you want to sit there? I'm Alan Paul. Good. Alan Paul. Nice to meet you. Yeah, we met. Good, thanks. Maybe the search.
I'm George King. Nice to meet you.
She was
Oh, okay, no. I should know.
Jackson, you're right. Right there. Yep, you're gonna fancy that.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. Sometimes it's hard with that. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Here, Justin.
there.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, cookies over there.
It's the more I have. It's the more I know.
This is what we should, this is what we
Oh, these are actually. So I heard. So I don't know if it got changed. Okay, this, we're gonna update this. I'm gonna ask. This will end up next meeting. And I'll make sure. It should already change it on my computer. They make the copies. Yeah, and I got it. So it's changed. Both on my email. This for you.
That was me, I thought I just picked it up.
We're gonna start in like 1 minute. The weather has things slowed up a little bit. There's some stragglers still coming in. Representatives from state ed just got here, so they're getting their stuff together. So once they get in here, we'll get started. Hey, good evening and welcome. I'm John Evans. I'm the shared superintendent between Roscoe and Livingston Manor. Seated out in the front here are our joint advisory committee members and some board members from both districts. With us tonight, we have James O'Connor and David Elliott from the State Education Department. We're going to talk to you a little bit later about the process from the state ed side, but I'm going to introduce Mr. Alan Pohl, and Deb Ayers is joining us from Florida, where I think it's a lot better outside down where she is than where we are right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Is everybody here with this microphone in the last row? Yes? Okay. Well, good evening. It is a pleasure for Deb and for me to be here to work with you on this very important community undertaking. We're all here to talk about gathering some data to find out whether or not it would be a good idea for Livingston Manor and Roscoe to merge their school districts. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really to lay out the process that we're going to use to try to gather that information and how we're going to allow people to make up their minds on whether people think it's a good idea or not. So that's what we hope to accomplish by the end of the evening. I'm going to do part of it. Our representatives from the State Education Department are going to be part of it. And again, thank you for asking us to work with you. I think this is the, hopefully, the last day of mandated mask wearing in schools. So if we're still here tonight at midnight, now if you're planning, probably 8 o'clock-ish, we should be finished. I wouldn't imagine it would be much longer than that. If you've got plans to take care of at home, that's probably about when we should finish up this evening. As John mentioned, the committee members who have been selected by the 2 school districts are the 18 people who are sitting in front. Welcome to you. You have been chosen to undertake a really important responsibility, to listen to this process, to listen to the data, to think about this study, to provide us input, to communicate back to your communities. And we thank you very much for your service on this committee. The people who are seated outside of the committee, we welcome you as well. All of our meetings will be open. We welcome anyone who would like to come to any of our meetings. Very, very happy to have you here. We usually will tell you at the beginning of each meeting that there really are a couple of sections of each meeting. The first meeting is, first part of the meeting is having the committee do its work. And we would appreciate it if the people who attend would defer to the committee, would allow them to do their work, certainly observe. And when their work is done for the evening, we will at every meeting provide the opportunity for people in the audience after the committee's work is done to make comments, to ask questions, and we'll be as responsive as we can. Deb and I also always say after each meeting, if anybody has questions that you're either don't want to ask in public, we hang around and answer questions if you have them. Whatever we can do to get your questions answered, we're happy to do that. So hopefully all of the committee members have in front of you an agenda, a listing of the committee members, as well as a copy of the handout. Those of you who are joining us, the handout you'll see up on the screen as we go through this, and you'll figure out the agenda as we go through item by item, so you're not really missing anything, but the committee members do have paper handouts. While we're going through the first part of the meeting, I'm going to start a couple of activities. At the end of each meeting, Deb and I will produce notes from each meeting that will be posted on each district's website. And we will email those out to the superintendent, as well as all the committee members within a few days of the meeting. And one of the things that we include on the meeting is a listing of those people who were in attendance. So at every meeting, we will pass out a sign-up sheet. The committee has its own sign-up sheet. So I'm going to ask if the committee members would please sign in. If you can just start this and pass it around. And then everyone else who's in attendance, I'm going to pass around this sheet. If you could please put your name on this sheet, and if you could please print. We'd like to make sure we have the spelling of your name correctly. And when I get back to Syracuse and try to decipher sometimes some handwriting, it's just a lot easier if you would print your name. And if someone will just make sure that before we leave tonight, I get this back and the committee sheet back, that will help us with the notes. So with that, let me just do a minute and a half on why I think school districts in general and Livingston Manor and Roscoe in particular engage in this kind of study. What we find out is that schools all across New York State are finding it very challenging to operate. Even before COVID, there were 1,001 things that were facing schools. One of them is the requirements for students to graduate seem constantly to be changing. What kids have to learn to be successful in a very rapidly changing world seems to change almost yearly for people who are in education. We're constantly running to make sure that we provide the most contemporary, appropriate education we can for our students. At the same time that we're trying to do that, what we find in the vast majority, I mean 95% of school districts in upstate New York, districts are facing pretty significant declining student enrollments. So at the same time that we're trying to continually ramp up our curriculum and what we teach kids, we have fewer students to teach, and that presents its own challenges that you'll learn more about as we go through the study. So we've got changing requirements, you've got declining enrollment, and at the same time that all of that is going on, schools are faced with the challenge, of course, how they finance the education they'd like to provide for their kids. There are some schools right now that have some money because of some federal initiatives that came about. And so right now, districts probably have a little more money than they're used to, but those who look into the future much beyond a year and a half or 2 years realize very quickly that the financial challenges that have faced schools for decades will be right back facing schools within another year or two as this federal money in all probability dries up. So changing standards with declining enrollment and difficulty finding the resources to run schools are putting school districts all across New York State in a challenging situation. And many school districts are saying, we have to think about doing business differently. We can't continue to do what we've always done, given those challenges. Some districts decide that maybe they should tuition their high school kids to another district. Some school districts are saying, maybe we should be closing 1 or 2 of our buildings. And some districts are saying, maybe we should look at whether or not we should merge with a local district. So regardless of the specific activity that school districts undertake, they're all kind of driven by the same idea about as circumstances change and running schools becomes more difficult, how are we going to do business differently? So given that challenge, Deb and I applaud you for being here tonight, because these two communities have shown the courage to at least say, let's take a look at doing something different. You're not making any commitment. The only commitment you're making is to do a study, but you should be applauded for at least asking the question, are we doing the best we can with our 2 districts organized the way they are, or should we be looking at something different? So good for you. Good for you. You should be proud of what you're doing, regardless of how this whole thing turns out. This is happening around the state. This is the 14th merger study that I've been involved with. So you're certainly not unusual in Livingston Manor and Roscoe. And I would also say that the fact that we're here this evening doesn't mean there's anything wrong in Livingston Manor, doesn't mean there's anything wrong in Roscoe. On the contrary, you should be applauded for being proactive and taking this step and saying, should we be doing something different? So our congratulations to you. I hope everybody is here for the right reason, to see if there should be changes that make sense for these two communities or not. And hopefully the process that I'm going to outline tonight, along with Mr. O'Connor from the State Education Department, will give you a much better idea of kind of where we're headed in the next few months. So with that as just a little bit of background, let me just move to agenda item number 3, and let's do, if we can, an introduction of our committee members. I'll introduce myself in a minute, because there are at least a few of you saying, who is this guy? and where did he come from and what's he doing in our school. But after, and then we'll ask Deb to do a quick introduction, but after we do our introductions, I'd like to go around and have the committee introduce yourselves to the group. And if you could tell us your name, obviously, tell us your affiliation. Are you a teacher? Are you an administrator? Are you a community member, a student, a support staff member? What's your role? And then tell us a little bit about your connection to school. You know, I teach here. I've got kids who go here. I've got grandkids that go here. I don't have any kids that go here, but I graduated from Roscoe in 1972, whatever. Don't laugh. Not that long ago. And so let us know your connection to school, okay? So let's do some introductions, and then we'll get on with the program. So I'll go first. As John mentioned, my name is Alan Pohl, and I'm one of the two consultants who is going to be facilitating this study with you. I was very fortunate to have a wonderful career in education. I spent most of my career working in 3 different BOCES and finished my career as the district superintendent of the DCMO BOCES, which is located in Norwich. You all know where Downsville is. Downsville was one of our component districts. So for 18 years, I was the district superintendent of that BOCES. I went from my beginning after college of being a high school science teacher and ended up as a district superintendent for 18 years. I retired in 2008, and a friend of mine from Syracuse said, are you interested in doing any consulting? And I said, I don't know. What do consultants do? I don't know. And so he wanted to know if I wanted to do a superintendent search back in 2008. I said, sure, I'll try it. And now 14 years later, consulting for me has become a second career. And what we do mostly is we help boards with superintendent searches, find new superintendents. We do merger studies, again, I mentioned before. We work with districts who are thinking about closing a building. We do facility studies. We do basically any kind of management study for schools, and it's amazing how busy we are. So I have, been very fortunate in my career. I've enjoyed being a consultant. I live in Manlius, New York, which is a suburb of Syracuse. My wife's a retired school nurse. We have 3 children and 6 8/9 grandchildren. Hopefully, I'm going to have 7 on April 8th. But I'll be up to 7 grandchildren. And that's where my time goes. So again, thank you for asking me to be here. A little bit about my background. How about Deb? Are you ready? Yeah, thank you.
Let me unmute and I will be. Good evening, everyone. I'm Deb Ayers. I will be very delighted to be back with you in person at our April meeting, but for now, a little bit about myself. I too am a retired administrator. I started my career in small rural schools in central New York as a teacher. I then moved into business administration and did about 34 years in that area. The last 17 of which were at the Onondaga Cortland Madison BOCES in Syracuse as the assistant superintendent for administration, which really encompassed all things finance and non-instructional, for lack of a better term. I live in central New York. I live in Tully, if you know where that is, the heart of central New York the ski areas there. And Alan is going to best me very soon, as I have 6 grandchildren. He's always got to one-up me somehow. So I'm excited to be working with all of you. And as I said, I look forward to seeing you in person next month.
Thank you, Deb. So that's who we are. And you'll have a chance to ask questions if you'd like later on. But why don't we move to committee introductions? Again, name, affiliation, teacher, support staff, student, etc., and your connection to the school districts. And as you go through this, you should have at your place a roster of the committee. If you would check to make sure that we have your name spelled correctly, that we have your email address down correctly, and if there are any changes, just give them to me by the end of the night, and I will take them home with me and then pass out an updated sheet next month. So if you want to follow along with this, if we could start the committee introductions. Who would like to go first? Jessica?
I'll get it out of the way.
Oh, okay. Start with that.
Hi, I'm Randy Rogers. I'm support staff at Roscoe. And my affiliation is really my husband, Stephen, who went to school here, graduated here. That's about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Robert Gould, support staff. I've been here close to 9 years. I have kids that go here from this town, not originally, for the last 20 years or so. I have 2 kids and a grandson that go to this school as well.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Hi, my name is George Kenny. My role would be community member. And, I'm a taxpayer in the Roscoe School District. I have 2 children that attend Roscoe. One of them is here this evening, Wesley, in the 6th and 9th grade. And it would be appropriate for me to say I also the president of a business that has a location here in Livingston Manor as well.
Great. Thank you.
Lauren Herrera from Livingston Manor. I am here as the district administrator, and I've been teaching and working in the district since 2009.
I'm Melissa Ebling. I've been with the district for 10 years. I'm also the union vice president for RTA.
I'm sorry, I missed. Who just?
Oh, sorry.
When you do the.
Sorry, he's my PE teacher voice. I'm Melissa Ebling. I've been with the district for about 10 years now. And I'm also with the vice president of our union.
At which district?
Roscoe, sorry.
Russell, thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Greenthal. I am with Roscoe Central School. I'm the 2nd grade teacher. I'm also the president of the Roscoe Teachers Association. And both my daughters went to Roscoe School. They graduated, and we kind of transitioned from New Jersey up here. And I think it was a great transition for them. They're now very successful women. And I think it was a good experience, and I'm very proud to represent the teachers in Roscoe.
I'm Lori Valentine. I'm a speech therapist here at Livingston Manor. I'm also the president of the Teachers Union. Both of my children graduated from Manor. We've lived here since 2006. My husband is local to the area. He attended Roscoe for a short while in his career. And we just love the area, love the small town, hometown feel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jessica Mall. I am the Livingston Manor LMTA Vice President. I've worked at Manor for 17 years now as the high school art teacher, and I am a prior graduate of Livingston Manor Central School.
Nancy Barnhart, community member. 2 of my children came here, had a wonderful experience with Livingston Manor. All the teachers, wonderful. My children are both very successful. We have a business here. I've been here 34 years.
I'm Lillian Constant. I'm from Roscoe. My children graduated from Roscoe. I'm a community member in Roscoe. I have 2 grandchildren attending Roscoe.
Thank you.
I'm Lori Ellen Kuhn. I was born and raised in Roscoe. After college, I moved back to Roscoe, raised my daughter in Roscoe. She's a graduate of Roscoe also. I'm president of Kiwanis. I'm the town chairman of the Democratic Committee. I am secretary of Beaver Hill Valley Cemetery. I'm co-captain of the Roscoe Food Pantry. I am a member of the Roscoe Chamber of Commerce, the Roscoe United Methodist Church, Roscoe Community Theater, Town Lake Homeowners Association. I'm a 28-year veteran special education teacher. 3 years have been spent here at Manor. I live in Roscoe. I teach at Manor. I love, so I have the best of both worlds. So.
Thank you.
You have no free time.
I guess we'll follow that. Justin Murphy, I have 3 children, 2 of which attend Roscoe. I graduated from Roscoe pre-K through 12. My wife also went 6th grade and graduated from Roscoe. So I can't compete with that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Francisco. I'm currently the assistant principal at Roscoe. I started as a teacher in Roscoe in 2000, and I also own a home and live in the school district, in Roscoe School District. I am involved with the chamber and the fire district in Roscoe, and I have 3 children, one of whom already graduated from Roscoe, one who's in 10th grade and one who's in 6th grade currently.
I'm Nicole Park, a community member. I teach at SU BOCES. I have 3 children in the Livingston Manor District. I have family and children that attend Roscoe Central School, so I feel like I'm well versed with both communities.
I'm Jacqueline Lim. I'm the Roscoe Central School student representative. I'm in 11th grade this year, and I've lived in Roscoe my whole life. I have a brother that graduated from Roscoe, and my wonderful mother, who is one of our high school English teachers. And I've also been involved in most of the extracurricular activities and organizations that Roscoe offers. And I'm actually our student government president.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Jillian Carlson. I'm the student representative of Livingston Manor. I'm a sophomore here, and I've been in school since kindergarten in Livingston Manor. And I'm also the class president of the sophomore class. I was class president last year of our class as well.
Very impressive. Thank you.
I'm Danielle Deverstone, graduated from Livingston Manor. I have 2 students, 5th grader and pumpkin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting. A wonderful cross-section of people, and not unlike many smaller school districts that are, what, 6 miles apart, a lot of connections across districts. So not unusual that would happen. Happens pretty often. But again, thank you for doing the introductions. Again, if you would check this listing and let me know if there are any corrections. We will be in great shape by the time we finish up tonight. Okay. Are we going too fast? Committee questions? So far, you want to get into it and ask questions as we go along? Okay. All right, then why don't we get started? Tonight, and probably some of the next meeting, we are probably going to talk at you a little more than we might otherwise in the future. In the future, we're going to ask you to break up into small groups. We're going to ask you to consider different questions. We're going to ask you to give us feedback on items. We're going to ask you to give us strengths and weaknesses. But before we get into that work, we think we need to lay some foundation. And the foundation, again, that we're laying tonight is, what is this process going to look like? And hopefully this will answer some questions that people have about where we're going in the next several months. So let me just begin by talking a little bit about why school districts consider reorganization. And again, this comes from studies that have been done all across New York State, as well as the studies that I've been involved in. They pretty much show the same things. And one of them is that districts look at the possibility of merging because oftentimes more opportunities, more course offerings become available to their students. It's pretty clear that larger high schools are able to offer more opportunities for students than our smaller high schools. And more high school kids located in the same building will provide the opportunity to have more electives, more college courses, just more opportunities than do smaller districts. I don't know what that means in this situation, but generally speaking, that's an attractive point for many school districts. Often get the opportunity to upgrade facilities and equipment and come up with a more effective and cost-effective administrative and support structure, in large part due to the fact that New York State provides significant financial incentive for those school districts to merge. And we'll talk in detail about that as we go through the process, but just for tonight at least, know that part of this conversation always has to refer back to significant financial incentive that the state of New York provides for school districts who merge, and that becomes very attractive for school districts because oftentimes, not always, and we don't know what's going to happen here because we haven't done the work yet, but oftentimes that results in the opportunity for school districts to actually reduce their taxes. So to summarize, more opportunities for kids, more cost-effective support structure and administrative structure, maybe improve your facilities, and your taxes go down. In some merger studies, this is what happens, and this is why some districts look at merger. On the other hand, there is a little more perhaps subjective component of merger that is also a reality for school districts. And some say, you know, the objective part that you just talked about, that may be there, but yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. Why doesn't it feel right? Because some districts are afraid that they're going to lose their local identity. You know, I was a wildcat, and my father was a wildcat, and my grandfather was a wildcat, and my God, my son's going to be a wildcat. Or I held the lead in the school play, and my aunt held the lead in the school play, and my God, my daughter is going to be on that stage in where are we tonight, Livingston Manor. And the thought of losing that local identity that goes with the Blue Devils or the Wildcats, or the fact that in small communities, school districts are the center of the community. Some people think, I don't know, that school is who we are as a community, and that's a lot to give up. Board representation, you know, right now, I live in Roscoe. I can walk a block and a half, and I know a board member that lives on that street, and I've lived near that person for the last 15 years, and if there's something wrong with the school, I know that I can walk over to that person and get an answer about what's going on in school. But if we merge, I'm not sure who the board member is going to be. You know, am I going to have the same kind of access? Or is that going to be removed from me? You know, we've got two small school districts here. If we merge, the school district is going to be bigger. And some people will see that even though it's not going to be a huge district, it's a lot bigger than what you have now if you put the two districts together. And some people say, you know, right now, I know my child's teacher will do anything for my student. Stay late, call to make sure he or she is okay. Choose my teacher as well. Our teachers will do anything for our kids. And if we merge, this district's going to be so big, my student's going to be just a number because I'm not used to a district that's that big. So the biggest busing time will be increased for some students. If the districts merge, there's going to be one high school. And so for some students, they are going to have a longer bus ride than they have now. There's no doubt about that. So we're going to have a shorter ride. But here are losing job security by employees. People who hear me talk about being more cost effective and eliminating redundancies translate that into, does that mean I'm going to lose my job? We'll talk about that throughout the study. It doesn't, but people will wonder what that means for their own job security. And then the last one, of course, is just the natural resistance that anybody has to change. And this is a big undertaking. This is a big change. And I think all of us get used to doing certain things in a certain way. And we start thinking about doing it differently. We say, no, thanks. I like the way I've always done it. And so change itself is difficult. So there's a couple of things. There are some real reasons why merger may be attractive. And we should acknowledge that there are some more subjective looks at this question.
that people may say, or, you know, maybe they're not quite so favorable. So that's kind of the overview. This is a centralization study. What that means is that if these two school districts decide to merge, and merge is the biggest umbrella, one of the options under merging is called centralization. In a centralization, the Livingston Manor School District is dissolved, the Roscoe School District is dissolved, and the two school districts come together and put together a brand new school district. From scratch, equal representation, both districts are part of defining what this new school district is going to look like. That's what this study is about. If you know people from other districts who have done a merger study, there is another kind that I'm just going to mention so you know that that's not what we're doing, but so you don't get confused if you hear other people talk about it. The other form of merger is called an annexation. An annexation is where two school districts look to merge, but instead of them combining as equal partners, one school district takes over the other school district. Okay, see how they're different? That's not what's happening here, though. This is where both districts would come together and form a brand new school district, not one school district getting bigger by taking over the second district. So equal partners, if this merger goes through, equal partners in defining what the new school district would look like. So what are we going to do by the time we finish this study? This study is going to be 120 pages long. And the bottom line purpose of the study is, first of all, to paint a very clear picture of what is going on in both Livingston Manor and in Roscoe. We all think we know what's happening in our neighboring district. We all think we know what's happening in our district, but sometimes those aren't exactly correct. So the first job is, in this study, to identify exactly what's happening in each of the two districts. And then to say, if the two school districts decide to merge, here are some recommendations about what the merged school district may want to consider. And as we look at defining the current conditions and possible recommendations for a merged district, we will look at student enrollments, how the district is organized, facilities, staffing, finances, transportation, and educational programming, including the academic program as well as the extracurricular program. We'll look at all of those things. Looking first at what exists and then what might exist if the merger were to go through. The scope of the study. We will talk about the possibility of adding classes, reorganizing staff, better configuration of what the grade structure might look like. You can read those and see some of the things that we'll do. There are some things, however, that are outside the scope of the study. When we finish, it's 120 pages. Not every question that every person has is going to be answered. So if you're an accountant who likes to have every single I dotted and every single T crossed, you're going to have a little bit of trouble with the ambiguity at the end of this study. Because there are some things we don't do, not because we couldn't, but we think that there are some things that are better left for the school district to decide. So we're not going to come up with what the name of the new district should be, what the color should be, what the mascot should be. We believe that, you should figure that out. We can talk about how many classes you might be able to add in your high school, but we're not going to say, you ought to add a biology class and not a math class, or you ought to add a sociology class, and we don't do the specifics. So we'll show you where there's opportunity for growth. And again, you can read those.
We don't talk about where every single bus is going to stop. If you have to know where your son or daughter is going to be picked up if the districts merge, whether it's on this corner or that corner, we don't get to that level of detail. So just know that there clearly is some things we look at, but there are still questions that we believe appropriately left to the merged district if they're back to merge. So you've met Deb and you've met me. You know, what's our role? Well, we come in as outsiders. We have no connection to Livingston Manor. We have no connection to Roscoe. I've known John Evans for a number of years. This is a little bit of a unique situation in that he's a shared superintendent for both districts. But beyond that, we have very, very little knowledge of each district. We certainly come with no preconceived ideas about either district, total unbiased perspective. But I will clear one thing up right now. You will hear us in this study. We did a study once where the people in the audience, after about 3 meetings, they said to us, you know, you always mention the other district first, and we sound like an afterthought. How come you always mention them first? You like them better than us? Are they a better district than we are? Why do you do that? Just so it's really clear, we do it alphabetically. So we talk about this as a Livingston Manor Roscoe study. Doesn't mean we like Livingston Manor and Roscoe or any of that stuff. We just do it. So please don't be in any way offended by that. That's why we do it that way. But again, we have no predisposition toward either district. We have no stake in the outcome. We are not here to get the two districts to merge. That is not our role. We're not here to make sure they don't merge either. We don't care about the outcome. What we care about is that we produce an excellent study that covers the things that need to be covered for people to make a reasonable decision on this question of merger, written in a way that you don't have to be a PhD student in educational administration to decipher, so that the average non-educator walking down the main drag in either Roscoe or Livingston Manor can read this and say, okay, I can understand this even though I've not been a school employee. That's our goal. Our goal, we're about writing a very excellent study. We are not here to get the districts to merge or not to merge. We don't really care how it turns out. In the end, that's for you to decide. We believe it. I've already mentioned that we'll produce notes after each meeting. It will go to the committee members and to the superintendent. And the superintendent will post the meeting notes as well as these PowerPoints on the websites for both school districts. So the committee members get them directly from Deb and me. Everybody else can access any materials associated with this merger study on each of the two districts' websites. And in the end, Deb and I write the report. As you heard, Deb and I both started as teachers. So we hope that we're sensitive to the students in our report. You're going to help us understand the culture of these two school districts. You will be the ones who say, you know, you and Deb may think this is a great idea, and this may work in Downsville, but for whatever reason, this isn't going to work in Roscoe. We want you to tell us that. Those are the culture questions. There are tons of special interest groups in schools. There are people who want more academic courses. There are people who want more programs for special education students. There are people who want more programs in the arts. There are people who are athletic boosters, and on and on and on and on. We appreciate those. Those are part of the school, but we won't be unduly influenced by any of those groups. We think they're all important, and we will try to make, you know, our best calls, understanding that these people will be a part of it. Educationally sound, fiscally responsible, and in the end, we don't recommend whether there should be a merger or not. We just write the study, say, here's the current condition, here's the recommendations, you decide whether or not the district should merge. How about you committee members? What expectations do we have for you? Well, we'd like you to attend all the meetings. And we understand not everybody can attend every meeting. We get that. If you cannot make a meeting, if you would just send Deb or me an email saying something's come up, I just can't be at the meeting tonight, just so that we know, we would appreciate it. But hopefully, because we've laid out the dates for all of the meetings well in advance, we hope we could be at all of them. If you can't, we'd appreciate it if you would just let us know. I want you to feel free to express your points of view and feel safe in doing that. We also hope that you will be a key communicator back to your community, so that when you walk into the diner on Saturday morning and somebody says, "Did you hear what these people from Syracuse are talking about doing with our schools?" You can say, "No, it's not exactly what happened there. Let me help you understand it better." Or if you're part of a PTA group and you say, "If you'd like, I'll take 5 minutes and just update the PTA on what's happening at the merger stuff." Those kinds of, anything you can do to get good information about this study into the community would be appreciated, because there will be rumors, there will be misinformation, and anything that you can do to help provide good information would be appreciated. And then just be respectful of the committee process. We want you to feel free to express your opinion. We also want everybody to realize that you're part of a committee, one of 18 people, and that everybody hopefully has a chance to contribute. So here's our meeting schedule. This is the plan. This is how the study gets done. Our next meeting is going to be on April 26th. And we are going to talk about enrollment, student enrollment projections, what's happened both in the history of student enrollment as well as what we project is going to happen in the future. And we're also going to look at the instructional and extracurricular program. That meeting is going to be held in Roscoe. One of the things you notice is that the location changes every month. We held a kickoff meeting in Roscoe in December. That's why we're here tonight. We'll be in Roscoe next time, back and forth every meeting. And next time we'll do enrollments and program. Meetings are going to start at 6 o'clock. Probably if you're, again, planning your evenings, probably 2.5 hours, probably a break. But about 8:30 is probably when we'll finish. So for your planning, that should be helpful. The other thing is that the next meeting and the meeting after that in May, see these asterisks. Those asterisks means that before the meeting, we're going to provide building tours of each of the buildings. So if you have never seen Roscoe, the school building, and you'd like a tour, at 5:15 before the April meeting, meet in the main lobby? The auditorium. Meet in the auditorium at 5:15. There'll be a tour if you want to see Roscoe. And then at the May meeting, which again begins, the business meeting begins at 6, but at 5:15 on May 16th, if you can come here, if you've never seen the Livingston Manor building, we'll give a tour of this building 45 minutes before the May meeting. In May, we will talk about facilities. What's the current configuration for facilities? How should we align the classes if there's a merger? And transportation. Those two topics go together. This is where the kid's going to go to school, and this is how we're going to get them there. So those two go together. We'll do that in May. In June, we're down to one topic. We'll talk about the impact of all of this on staffing. And this is where you'll start talking a lot more to us. That's why we're only doing one topic for that month. We want to hear from you. And then on June 28th, we're going to wrap all of this stuff back up together and say, given all of these things we've talked about, enrollments, program, facilities,
transportation and staff, this is what the finances look like. We'll do them on June 28th. When we finish that, Deb and I will work on the final report, and we'll get back together on July 25th, where we're going to ask you to review the draft of the report. We'll have the full-blown thing, and we'll spend the whole meeting saying, what do you think? Did we get this right or not? What should we change? What should we modify? So with any luck at all, these are the 6 dates that you have been given. You now see what the topic for each meeting is going to be. By the time we get to June 28th, you will have a very good overview of what these 2 school districts look like and what they could look like if there's a merger. Very important slide. This is where your calendar should come together. Okay? There really, in any merger study process, there really are 2 phases of a merger process. The first phase is the study phase. The study phase is what I just outlined right here. This is how the study gets done. This is phase 1 of the merger process. Phase 2 is really the voting phase. So you can see the voting is not going to take place until the fall. And I'll give you a timeline in a minute, and our SED people will give even more detail. But you know, sometimes some people come to this first meeting thinking they're going to vote tonight on whether or not to merge. No, that's way down the road. You got a lot of work to do before we do that. But the voting phase is the second phase. Now, after the study is done, Deb and I disappear. I mean, not really. You know, we're certainly around to help in any way that we can, but our job is to do the study. Once the study is done, then John Evans, along with your district superintendent, who is Dr. Dufour, some people know him as the BOCES superintendent, he's the district superintendent, he's actually a state ed department employee. Dr. Dufour, Mr. Evans, and the state education department are the people who take over the voting phase after the study is completed. In order for 2 school districts to merge, 6 positive votes have to take place. When this is all done, the study is all done, there's going to come a time when the Livingston Manor Board and the Roscoe Board are both going to look at this study and say, do we want our communities to vote on this question of merger? And if it's going to go to the communities to be voted on, the Livingston Manor Board has to say, yes, we want the community to vote on. And the Roscoe Board says, yes, we want our community to vote on this. It's 2 votes. Both boards have to want to put it out. So if they both say yes, then it goes out to a community vote. And the Livingston Manor community votes on the question of merger, and the Roscoe community votes on the question of merger. Count the votes separately. You don't add them up. And from the 2 communities, you count them separately. And the merger question has to pass in Livingston Manor, and it has to pass in Roscoe. 2 more votes. But if that happens, those 2 votes are just advisory. They don't even count as final votes. So if it passes in the advisory votes, then there are 2 more community votes. 1 in Livingston Manor, 1 in Roscoe. These are the final votes. Again, it would have to pass in Livingston Manor. It would have to pass in Roscoe. So 6 votes. Each board has to vote to put it out to the public. 2 more votes. Each community has to prove it in a straw vote or an advisory vote. 2 more votes. And then after that, each community has to approve it on a final vote. So 6 votes have to be positive. Any negative vote along the way, and that's it. So this is, you can see this is a pretty complex process, pretty complex undertaking. We're going to do a lot of work in the study, but then you got the voting phase as well. Big undertaking. Timeline, our state ed department people, I think, are going to talk a little more about this. going to do our part. You know, we're beginning the study tonight in March. As you can see from our previous schedule, we're going to finish the study in July. State Ed Department will review the study in August, and in early to mid-September, Deb and I will come back and ask the two boards to come together, and Deb and I will present the final study to the two boards of education. Okay. And then the community start talking about it. I'm going to leave the rest of this up to our ICD people. That's okay. But if all else goes positively, the new merged district will start July 1 of 2023. So you can see we're out almost a year and a half before this would actually happen. This is a big undertaking. I get the sense that informing the public has really happened very well in these two districts. Websites, newspaper articles, whatever. The turnout tonight is a testament to the fact that people know this is going on. So whatever public information activities the district takes on are positive. Our philosophy is that this complete process is done in the open, it's done in the light of day. Now, we work with John, we work with Marlon Peters and Jane Mann to get us information. We had dinner with John tonight before the meeting, kind of last minute logistical planning. That's it. Everything else that's going to happen is going to happen here. It's going to happen in the open. Want the committee members here? Anybody who wants to come and watch, welcome. When this is over, you may say, I don't agree with Alan on anything he did. But we hope you say, but he didn't try to sneak anything past us. It was all, the discussion was all done in the light of day, and they didn't try to pull any fast ones. So agree or not agree, the most important thing is that this process is open and you have access to it. It's why when every meeting is done with the committee, we open it up to anybody who attends to make comments or ask questions at that point in time. We're certainly about that. With that, I would also say that this openness is really important because of one other factor that committee people bring to this process, and the observers as well. We want this to be open. We want people to talk. We want you to listen. It's very possible that some of you people are here tonight with some preconceived ideas that this is a great idea if these two districts merge. And I'd be shocked if there weren't some people who are here tonight saying, over my dead body, this isn't going to happen. That's fine. We accept that. We never asked for the merger committee to be people who were for the merger or against it. This openness that we hope occurs will allow conversation that no matter what your mind frame is tonight, all we ask of you is that you keep an open mind through this process, that you listen respectfully to other people, that you ask questions if they're on your mind, and at the end, if you're for it, wonderful. If you're against it, wonderful. But as you go through the process, we would hope that you would have an open mind, like this is an open process. And then in the end, decide you got to do what you're going to do, and that's fine. But this openness that we are seeking, we would also seek the same openness from members of the committee. So, bottom line, every meeting we usually end up with takeaways. You go to the diner Saturday morning and somebody says, so what'd you find out at school on, was it Tuesday night? You say, I don't remember anything. This guy from Syracuse came in with a suit and he talked at us for 45 minutes. I don't remember anything about what he said. It was overwhelming. And what we want you to do at the end of every meeting is say, if there's only 2 or 3 or 4 things you can remember, what are the things we want you to remember from tonight? You've got the handout as a resource, but here's what you should remember. In all probability, there are going to be pluses and minuses for both districts as we go through this study. Haven't done a study yet where it was all positive or all negative for any district. Probably going to be some pluses, probably some minuses. It's a centralization study. One district is not engulfing the other. Both districts are coming together to form a brand new school district. July 1, 2023, process is almost 16 months long. So significant undertaking, and everything is going to be open. Everything's going to happen right here or right in a room like this in Roscoe. No hidden meetings, all done here. These are the 4 things we'd like you to remember, if nothing else. Okay? So, I'm done. And I need a water badly. But let me, how about if we just allow the committee for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if you have any questions before we turn it over to the State Ed Department. If there's anything that I said, committee first. Do you have any questions? Let's ask them now. Yes.
Just clarify, who gets to vote on anybody living in the school district, paying school taxes, has the ability to vote on the merger, or please clarify who?
Yeah, same, yes, anybody who lives in the community, same voting eligibility as for voting on the school budget. And not minors, but yeah, anybody that's, what, 18? Yeah, whatever. Yes, everybody in the community can vote in that, in those 2 votes. Any other questions? Yes.
So you're gonna make a recommendation in the end, and it's gonna go to the boards of education. Do they tweak it, or do they take exactly what you recommend? How does that go?
Okay, everybody hear the question? The boards tweak our final recommendation, or do they have to take it exactly the way it is? Number one, I want to clarify again, we don't recommend whether or not the district should merge, but we do recommend some options if the districts decide to merge. There's that clarification. Second of all, there is nothing that is legally binding about our report. Our report is one that provides direction, priorities, if you will, for the school district should they decide to merge. So there's nothing that is legally binding. I will tell you that my experience has been that probably 90 to 95% of what's in a report gets incorporated into the final new district. But every once in a while, a district will find something and said, you know, we know the consultant said we should put 7th grade in this building, but we think 7th grade we should better in that building. Possibly, yeah, that kind of thing, tweaking can happen because there's nothing legally binding. But the reality of it is most of it shows up in the merged district.
What does the Board of Education look like if it was approved? Is there a voting process that takes place before the new district is formed, or does that happen afterwards?
I think Jay is going to talk about that. Can we hold that question? Okay. Okay, then let me turn it over to Jay O'Connor. And then I will come back and we'll do another opportunity for the committee to ask questions. And then we will open it up to all of our other people with that, Jay.
Evening, everybody.
Can you use the mic so it comes through for the people that are attending the vote?
Can I roll?
It's on.
Okay, take
You
it
can,
out.
yeah, you can take it out.
I tend to want.
That's good.
This better? Well, thank you. We appreciate the chance to be here for this meeting. I'm Jay O'Connor. I'm with my colleague, David Elliott. We work in the Office of Ed Management Services. And our office is the program office in the Education Department that is responsible for the work of the department and the commissioner when it comes to school district organization and reorganization. So we're the office that will work with Alan and Deb and John, District Superintendent Dufour, through this whole process, along with all of yourselves. Our work really begins, as Alan said, after the study is done, even though we talk to them as they go along and we created a draft timeline to guide us. Our work really begins once we start to potentially move towards all of those votes that Alan talked about. And I guess one other idea that I would hope people would take away along with those 4 or 5 bullets that Alan mentioned is that when it comes to the voting process for school district reorganization, it's different than what you're used to. It's not done the same way. And oftentimes we get questions about why are we doing it like this? This is not how we vote when we have a budget vote and the such. And the underlying reason is there are sections of education law that govern how we have to do this process when it comes to the vote. And those sections of law are different than the sections of law that govern how you do your budget votes now, for example. Or if the Board of Education were to call a special meeting to vote on a capital project or the purchase of buses. Those are different sections of law that they follow when they do that. We have a whole different set of rules when it comes to how the reorganization votes are done. And the job of our office is to make sure that those things are done so that in part, at the end of the process, the only thing we want anybody to be debating is whether or not you should have voted yes or no. We never want there to be any question about how the process was done. And that's our responsibility to walk the boards and the clerks and everybody through those steps to make sure that it's done right. Theoretically, for most residents, when they come in to vote, it won't look too different. But we just want to get that out here at the beginning of the whole process, that if we get to that point, it's not going to look exactly the same as what you're used to. Now, just so you know, some of these laws that we are having to use date back to the 1950s and the 1960s. And there are people who will tell you that's the wrong way to do things and it should be different. And that may very well be the case. But these are the laws that we have to work with at this moment in time. I can tell you the last adjustment to one of the laws that really affects us happened in 1997 when they allowed absentee ballots for reorganization votes. So that was 25 years ago. Some of those laws are even older and they've never been changed. And that's just the way we have to work with. So there's going to be some differences. And we just kind of wanted to get that idea out to you early so that you kind of have a sense, and those of you from the community, you'll also begin to hear when we talk about the process. You know, and it's a much of a cliche to say we ask you to trust the process, but that's what we ask the boards and the districts to do because we have to follow those steps to get to the end where the votes are happening as they're supposed to. These aren't made up. The education department has been overseeing school district reorganizations for a long time. We work with our office of counsel to make sure we get it right. But they're just different. And we just want to kind of get that word out today. So if we get to that point, maybe when the time comes, you'll say, oh yeah, I remember the guy with the bad haircut telling me that it was going to be different. And therefore, this is why we're doing it the way we do it. The advisory referendum that Alan talked about, that's not in law. That's a practice that the education department established many years ago. I think in part because a reorganization process is a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the boards, the clerks. It's a lot of work for us at the department. And back in the day when there were 3 or 4 or 5 reorganizations happening in a given year, I think they created that in a way to say, all right, let's really see if it appears there's enough support to then move into the statutory process. We're not involved with the advisory referendum. We'll offer a suggestion for the wording. It's a very simple one line. Should we consider centralization? Boards of education will run that vote just like you always do. If that passes, and we move into the statutory process, that's where then the department, because it's now on behalf of the commissioner, sort of take the wheel, if you will, from the boards of education, because it's no longer the boards calling these votes. Now it's the commissioner who's calling the vote, because the law says this is how we have to do it. And that's where we really get involved. So the statutory vote, let's just suppose the advisory referendum is held, it's passed, and we move into the statutory vote. It's what we call a commissioner's vote, because the commissioner literally orders or issues an order that says, and there shall be a vote held, and that's what we have to work with. And so at that point, the boards of education are involved with kind of the mechanics of running the vote, but it's not their vote anymore. Now it's the commissioner's vote. And that's where our role comes in, to make sure that we do it the way we have to and to help ensure that it goes as smoothly as possible. If we get to that point, just these are little details, just so you'll have them. Don't worry about ever having to remember them all. The first thing the commissioner does after that straw vote might pass is the commissioner issues an order. And that order literally lays out a new district. It says in the towns of, and it lists all the towns that the two districts encompass, shall be a new district, and it gives it a name. And as Alan talked about, that name is in there for the purpose of having a name that people are voting on, if you will, as part of that order. 2 out of the last 3 centralizations that have happened in New York State, dating back to 2012, the districts, once they were reorganized, they changed their name. They don't use that name that was in that order. But there's a name in there. And it simply is an order that says, all right, I'm going to lay out a new district, and here it is. But it doesn't really mean anything yet. But what it does is it triggers a process by which then the residents formally, if you will, ask the commissioner to issue an order to hold a vote. And so there are 2 petitions that are done. It's 10% of the people who voted, or 100 names. The first petition simply asks the commissioner, all those people sign, and it says, Commissioner, please set up so we can have a vote. Because that's what the law says you have to do as the residents of this new district. So we take care of that petition. Then there's a second petition. And that second petition is important if we want to be able to have the vote held in both districts. Because otherwise the law just says the commissioner orders a vote in one place. But then somewhere along the line, probably people said, that's not right. And so they created a section of law that said, okay, how many ever districts are going to reorganize? If you want to be able to vote in your respective districts, we have a second petition, and the residents of whatever district we're asking for to be held that vote, which is called the special election district, they sign a petition too. So for example, in this case, one of the districts is designated as the primary site, the other district is designated as the special election district. Residents of that special election district would sign a second petition and said to the commissioner, please let us vote in our own district for this centralization vote. And so we take those petitions, we get them processed back in our office. The commissioner issues another order and says, and now we'll hold the vote. And there are all kinds of deadlines and timelines that we have to follow. And so one of the reasons that we set up a draft timeline now is because we have to try to make sure we can fit in all of these votes that Alan was talking about. And by the time things get done, and when you start talking about these timelines and the holidays, it gets pretty tight to get all this done. So as of right now, we have an early December or mid-December vote, which would be the statutory vote on centralization. When you go in, if we get to that point, you as a resident, you go in to vote, you'll actually see three things on the ballot that day. You'll vote on whether or not you should centralize Roscoe, Livingston Manor into a single district. You'll vote on what should the size be of a new Board of Education. And you will vote on what should be the terms of those new Board of Education members. Those last two about the Board of Education members, we only count if the centralization proposition passes in both districts. So like Alan said, they're both counted individually. So we count the votes in Roscoe, we count the votes in Livingston Manor on the centralization. If the yeas win, then we immediately bring all the votes together that night and we figure out what's going to be the size of the new board and the length of their terms as a whole new district. So really after that centralization proposition, almost immediately, you're starting to begin to be a new district because we count the votes for the board members and their terms as one aggregate. If we were to do that vote and the centralization proposition fails in one or the other district or both, then we stop everything at that point. And we have to wait at least a year before you could re-vote again. You get a second chance within 2 years to vote on this kind of proposition. And then we see what happens at that time, if that were to be the case. But if, again, assuming that the centralization proposition passes, counted individually, and that was one of the newer, if you will, quote unquote, newer amendments to the law back in 1989, they changed the law so that those votes are counted separately. It used to be that they were counted all together, and you can imagine when there was a bigger district and a smaller district, what was happening to the votes. So they changed the law to say, we'll count the proposition for centralization separately, and then if it passes, we immediately bring everybody together and we figure out what's going to be the size of the board and the term. So for those of you keeping track at home, you have voted on the advisory referendum, and now you have voted on the centralization proposition. The next step is you have to elect a new Board of Education. So almost immediately after that happens in December, we start working on another vote. And that vote is right now is scheduled for sometime in mid-February to elect the first board of this new school district. And there's a process and candidates will file petitions. And then late in January, they'll meet with the district superintendent and cast lots to see where they are on the list of voters and things. And in mid-February, the residents now of this new centralized district will go to the polls again. And this time you'll elect the new Board of Education, the first Board of Education of the new district. That's 3 votes just for the residents so far. If you then add your May budget vote in May of 2023, you actually will go to the polls 4 times between July 1 of 22 and June 30th of 2023. So as Alan said, this is a long process. It takes a long time. There's a lot of involvement between petitions and voting for the residents. We're there all the way through the voting process. Again, like Alan and Deb, we don't have any preconceived notion. We don't come in with any biases. Our job is to make sure the process is followed so that everybody can feel like it was fair and the process was done according to the law. And at the end of the day, the only thing you're going to talk about is what was the outcome of the vote. And the reason I say that is because just like an action of the board now, just like a vote that happens now, a resident has the right to challenge the outcome. They can file an appeal to the commissioner and say, I think something was amiss with this vote. And that's true for a reorganization vote as well. And there have been some challenges to reorganization votes over the years. People who thought the process, something happened, and it affected the outcome. So part of our job, David and I, is to make sure we don't ever get to that point. We want it to be run according to how it should be. T's are crossed, I's are dotted. At the end of the day, everybody can feel like it was done right. You all had a chance to vote, and the outcome was what it was. And that's really our primary role in this whole process, is the statutory voting and making sure that that happens. A lot of this you won't see, you won't know about. It's all the work behind the scenes. John will know what's going on because he'll be signing all kinds of things. The district superintendent will know because he's doing a lot of work. The district clerks will know, But the goal of all of that is to make sure that when people walk in to vote, it's very smooth. They know what they're voting on each time. And at the end, we have a yes or a no. And if we have a yes, we've then elected a new school board. The new school board that's elected in early February, soon after, would meet with the district superintendent. They take their oaths of office right then, and they start working to get set up for a budget vote, and the district beginning operation on July 1st. So there is no waiting with the new school board members in this case. They're seated almost immediately because there's a lot to do between February and May when the budget vote is, and certainly by July 1st when the district will be up. So again, don't remember any of that. You probably won't, and that's quite all right. Just understand, I guess, that the process is different, and the job of our office is to help work through that so that everybody has a fair and equal chance to get in and vote all the way along the way. So I'll stop there, try to answer any questions, certainly if there are any.
For voting for absentee ballots and voting for all of the voting.
Absentee ballots, that was the change that was made back in 1997 to allow absentee ballots for reorganization votes. So yes, they're in like they are for your budget votes. No, I don't believe so, because I think their term really begins, if you will, starts July 1st. But their terms will be staggered when you vote so that they're not all coming up for reelection at the same time. And
Hey Jay, it's Deb. Could you repeat the question? It's a little bit hard, I think, for me and probably the others viewing online to hear the question.
Sure. So the first question was whether absentee ballots are allowed, and the answer is yes. And then the second question was whether or not new board members elected in February, if they would have to run again in May. I believe the answer to that is no, because they're starting officially their term, if you will, July 1st. Like you have now, both of you are central school districts. The new board, you'll be voting 5, 7, or 9 members, 3, 4, or 5-year terms. So that's what will be those other 2 on the ballot, along with the centralization proposition if we get to that.
Thank you. Oh, good. Hang around for a minute just in case. All right, thank you very much, Jay.
Alan, I'm going to harass you for a minute too.
Okay.
I've been monitoring the Q&A from the remote viewers, and there was one question that you can answer pretty quickly, I think. You mentioned that you had been a part of 17 mergers, and the question was asked how many had been successful. I certainly can speak to the one that I was part of with Elizabethtown, Lewis, and Westport, but I wasn't sure of how many of the 17 were successful.
I think that it's 14, and I believe 3 of the 14 was successful. You can find success as merging. 3 of them merged of the 14 that I've done. So we have, is there something else, Deb? for right now?
No, there was a question that was just asked. Is there something that students can do to have their voices heard? I know there's representation certainly on the committee. So that was a question. I'm kind of restating it, but I think that's just the gist of it is how can the students have their voices heard?
Well, not every merger study has student representatives, and this one does, so we welcome you and applaud that decision to have students here. Number two, if students are of the appropriate age, they can vote on the question of the referendum and certainly have their voices heard that way. Third, we have heard that a number of participation in government classes in the senior year of high school use this process as a discussion topic that frames a number of lessons. If you're a high school social studies teacher, you know this better than I do. I was a science teacher. But that's how, students really have the same opportunity for voice in this process as the community or the committee does.
And just to restate the question I just answered, the voting age is 18.
Okay. So we have finished our agenda. I've done my stuff. You've heard from the State Education Department. We've asked the committee if they have questions. We still have time, not that we have to stay till 8 o'clock, but let's use this time for members of the committee or members of the audience who have come to observe tonight. Why don't we just open it up to any questions that anybody has? And we'll do our best to see if we can respond to your questions. Anybody? Again, remembering if you're a little reserved about asking questions here, I'm going to hang around afterwards. If you want to ask me then, you certainly can. But if anybody that has a question now that you'd like to ask or a comment that you'd like to make, this is that opportunity.
Alan, one of the things that we're going to do to help make this process open and allow students, community members, parents, is we're working on a form on our website where people can submit questions, concerns for the committee and for the consultants to have addressed throughout the study process. That's in the development stages right now. But in the next week or so, we hope to have that up and running so that if there's people that aren't comfortable asking a question at the meeting, they can go and submit that online.
Thank you. Okay, questions, comments, anyone?
If the stockholder advisory vote is approved, what happens between that and the final vote? Any adjustments or?
No, I mean, what happens is that there's more conversation in the community about making sure everybody knows that the advisory vote passed, what it means that I call it the binding referendum. Jay called it the commissioner's vote, whatever that final vote that determines whether or not it's going to merge. You have a continued dialogue in your community about what it is. Probably would hold another hearing or two in each community about the study in preparation for the final vote. But no, essentially nothing changes. The vote is basically the same as the advisory vote. Right.
You mentioned there's a 1-year window if the final referendum doesn't pass, to put it up for a vote again. Does it have to go through the advisory referendum vote before it goes to a final vote again, or is it just automatically go to the final vote?
No, it would just be another statutory vote. And if it had passed in one district and was defeated in the other, where the district that it passed, those residents would not vote again. It would only be the district where it was defeated. If that were the case, just one more step, if it was revoted on and passed, then we have to have a vote between then and the Board of Ed election, because we have to bring everybody back together to decide what would be the size of the new board and how many years on their term. So we ran into that Not the last centralization, but the one before that. We waited a year. They voted again in the one district in December. We had to have a vote in January to decide the size of the board. And then we had to have another vote in February to elect the board. So nothing happens in between then. It goes right to another statutory vote and only in the district where it was defeated, if it was won.
That's an automatic process, or does the commissioner decide?
You have to, the residents have to request that. It doesn't happen long.
We didn't do that last time, did we? I don't remember when we tried the merge study for how we voted. I don't think it was like that. Do anybody remember? Because I know that one town voted, the other town voted it down, and then we voted again, and that town voted yes, and this town voted no. So you just said that, I'm just saying, Manor says yes, Roscoe says no. Manor doesn't get the vote again, only the Roscoe vote, right?
Right, if you're right about the statutory vote.
Okay. We just don't want both schools to close. We want to keep both schools open in both towns. That's what a lot of people want, that I've heard from both towns. And I've been in both schools. I have 2 kids that graduated from Manor and 2 from Roscoe. So I guess I top 4.
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier that addressed why other districts have explored this in the past, and I haven't heard anything about why specifically these communities are being asked to consider this. What's driving it here?
Okay, all of the same reasons that Alan had, it's come up in the past before, as Donna has mentioned. There is declining enrollment in both districts. There are constant changes happening with education. Various community members have approached board members with the question of, should we look at it? And those are questions that without a study can't really be answered. So kind of like Alan laid out, the fact that a study is occurring doesn't mean a merger is happening or isn't happening. It's the first process to allow the advisory committee and the boards and the communities to make an informed decision going forward on whether they should or should not merge.
Other comments or questions?
People can come. Yes?
All of the advisory committees will occur exactly like this.
Okay, so we can go and
Yep.
tell everybody in
So-
Roscoe, we can tell everybody in the internet.
I'll do that. I'll take care of that. I got it. So like Alan mentioned in the beginning, this is a meeting in public of the advisory committee.
Yes.
The public is welcome to attend, and at the end of each meeting, there'll be an opportunity for everybody that's attending, either via the webinar or here in person, to ask questions, make comments. If we're not in that phase of the study, Alan kind of laid out the different topics that are going to be discussed in each meeting. If we're talking about transportation and the question is about staffing, the staffing one is in June. If there's questions or concerns about those upcoming meetings, knowing about them in advance, so we can hopefully make sure that the information to address those questions is handled at the meeting would be helpful. And that's why even my email address is on both of the websites. If there's questions that people have, they can send them to me, they can send them to the district clerks, they can use the form that will be on our website. That way, all of those can hopefully be answered throughout this process.
Yes.
Had projected state over the course of 15 to 20 years, I believe. I would like to see in the finance meeting tax, like a projected tax over the state 15 to 20 years.
Yes. We will have tax projections at the finance meeting. I'm not promising there'll be 15 years because the formula for 15 years that drives the incentive money that I was talking about is in law. You just have to make too many assumptions to try to project a tax rate for 15 years.
So I'm not promising that. I'm promising that we will show you how much incentive money will come for 15 years. And we'll do a little projection on tax rates, but it's not going to be 15 years long. Just too many things can happen. Couple, 3 years, are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? Absolutely. That'll be part of that meeting. But it's not going to be 15 years out. Just, okay.
Like university, oh, it would be a tax decrease for 3 years, but then it jumps up.
We are going to talk about that. Absolutely going to talk about that. Yep.
Okay, on the three school districts that you were part of merging, how many schools were merged in each district? And how many schools were permanently closed?
The merger studies that I've done have all been 2-district studies. And I don't believe that a building has ever been closed, except where a district made the decision to build a brand new campus. But where the original buildings remained, I can't think of one where the building closed. The best I can do tonight, but I can't think of one where the building closed. Yeah, sorry.
So that chart with the percentage operating gain.
Yes.
Right, with 755,000 for the first 5 years, et cetera. That's still accurate?
Yes. Yes.
That's based on 2006, 2007.
Yes.
So that number will change, will increase.
Will not increase. Will not decrease. That's it. Yep.
That's the incentive.
Not going to be both districts. There's going to be one district. All right. All right.
What's the question here?
Let me, at the last, when we did the kickoff meeting in Roscoe in December, we were specific about the financial incentive from the state, saying that there's a formula that drives additional state aid to a merged school district that lasts for 14 years. The 15th year it runs out. And we had an amount of money for each year. Will that stay the same? Yes, it will stay the same. It's in the law. It's driven by certain state aid figures from the year 2006, 2007. And we will address that table in detail at the finance meeting. Yes. Yes.
Is it possible, maybe in the meeting that discusses budget, to take a look at how the respective districts have voted to support their school budgets?
Yes, that will be part of the study. Yes, the question, did you hear the question, Deb? Yeah, that will.
I'm missing many of the questions, but go ahead.
Whether or not we will show the budget vote history of the 2 school districts and whether or not the communities have approved their district budgets.
Yep, we do. Alan, as long as I'm unmuted, there's a couple of questions when you're ready for them from the remote viewers.
Okay.
You want to do them now?
Yes, yes, Deb.
Oh, okay. So I think John actually answered part of this question. The question is, whose idea was it to do the study, which is what I think John spoke to, and how much will it cost?
The cost of this study is $53,000.
And back in July, the districts, in anticipation of doing the study, applied for a Department of State grant. We were awarded that grant in December, and that pays for basically half of that study. We were awarded $25,000 towards the $50,000, $54,000 study. So the rest of it is paid, split between the 2 districts.
Okay, thank you. And the other question, which you touched on, but I thought it was important for everyone to hear it as well there in the room, is will the study examine the cost effectiveness of closing one of the current school facilities or just combining districts and still maintaining both buildings?
Well, yes, that meeting, the, what?
The facilities meeting, yeah.
Yeah, the one that we talk about facilities. What are we gonna do? We're gonna show the current condition that exists in both districts right now. How is each room used? Or how many rooms are vacant? How many things are overcrowded? We'll look at the current condition of how the buildings are used right now. And then we'll make a recommendation on if there's a merger, what are the options for how the building would be reconfigured? There's only gonna be one high school. So having said that, you know, we haven't looked at the data. That's why we do the study. I don't know what's going to happen with the buildings.
Right, and part of that look is to see, would all of the students fit in one of the existing buildings? That's part of that.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. I'm sorry. Well, there's no law that provides for the state to mandate school mergers. So this is right now that I'm aware of, this is the only process whereby schools can merge. There have been states that have passed laws that gave the governor the power to merge school districts. That's never happened in New York State. I don't believe it's on the docket being discussed right now. I would be surprised, given the history of local control of public schools in our state, that it would happen. So right now, no, that could not happen. Again, 40 years from now, no idea. Right now, no. This is the way schools merge.
I want to say something.
I'm sorry?
I graduated from high school, but I also went to math school. I know back in the day, there was rivals between the two schools. But now, you know, I mean, like I said, I don't care. People think I'm totally for it. You see this sport, everything, you know, everybody's working sports. The kids are going. I mean, I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, I know you guys have to do a study. There's so many kids out there who will not play sports. I mean, you know, Roscoe kids won't play sports. If they're with Manor kids won't play. If they're with Roscoe, such and such. I mean, why? What is the big deal? I mean, why can't they just make it one big thing?
Well, you can make it one district, but there's a process that you have to go through. I mean, again, I've done 13 studies and 3 of them merged. There are reasons why people don't want to do this, just like there are reasons in other districts why they do want to do it. Again, I haven't looked at much of the data because we're just starting this. So I can't tell you, even from an objective standpoint, does this make sense or not? I don't know. You know that better than I do. But no matter what people think tonight, the only way to legally consider this as an option is to go through the process that I've laid out for you tonight from the study perspective, and Jay has talked about from the vote perspective. That's the only way to do this. And then the communities have their say. There just is no other way to do it.
Don't you, Jill?
You know, here's another observation from doing 14 of these. Kids are going to be fine. The kids are fine. This is oftentimes not an issue about the students. You know, it's not the students. You know, I don't know what to say. Trust me, there are people in this room who don't think this is a good idea. I'll bet you. And there are people in this room who think it's a great idea. And we hope that no matter what your thoughts are tonight, you can put those in a parking lot for 6 months and listen to our discussions, and then either say, yep, I didn't change my mind at all, or, you know, I never thought of it that way.
The number one thing is they don't want schools to in their town.
Now, regardless of what people think, we have to go through the process in order for everyone to have the opportunity, if both boards in August decide that first of the 6 votes that Alan talked about, both boards have to say, yes, we're going to send this to the state for approval and putting it before the voters. So we hear you, but we have to go through the process in order to get to the point where you and everybody else can check a box and says yes or no.
John, I have 2 for Manor and 2 for Roscoe.
I know that,
I'm
Donna,
the wrong person.
but we have to go through the process regardless of how you feel.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
How many of those mergers would you say led to staff reductions on the educator side?
I don't believe any. Now, there are position reductions that are part of every study, position reductions. That doesn't necessarily mean that staff lose their jobs. You can reduce positions and create more courses. You can reduce positions, but people resign and move to Syracuse. You can, lose positions and people pick up a special education class or become a reading teacher. So I want to be clear, there's a difference between reducing positions and reducing staff. Every study that I think I've done has had some reduction in positions. I'm not aware of a study where anybody lost their job. Is that clear? You know what does that make sense? Yes?
What about teacher to student ratio? In the ones we've done before, have you found an increase or a decrease in teacher student ratio?
Generally, the teacher-student ratio increases because in small rural school districts, whether you're talking about elementary classes that may have 9 or 10 students in them, or you're talking about high school electives that may have 3 or 4 students in them, when you merge districts and you merge 2 advanced biology classes from 2 districts that each have 4 kids in them, and you have 1 advanced biology class that now has 8 in it, they go up usually because that's the efficiency that is able to be achieved. No study that I've ever done puts 26, 28, 30 kids in a class. That just nobody, we've never done that. But having said that, the numbers go up because the other reality that I'm going to talk about at the next meeting, I haven't finished it yet, but I'll bet you've got some really small classes. And as money gets tight, the question is going to be, how long can we afford to maintain these classes with 3 kids in them? So merging can serve to preserve opportunities for students, but you may see the enrollment go from 3 to 7. So yes, the enrollment often goes up, but it doesn't go up to 40 kids in a class. And you'll see that next time.
Your other schools that merge, what happens to the test scores of those students? They stay the same?
Yeah, we don't, I think by and large they're the same. I will tell you, we do not have good data. We have not done a study on what happens to student test scores after a merger. We have anecdotal information. People say to us that they appear to be roughly the same, but I don't have a study to share with you. $7.57, really, that's good. Last chance. Are you doing those, Lauren?
I'm monitoring them, but Deb's handling them.
Nothing done.
But there's no more.
All right, last chance. Yes, sir.
Ratio calculated, and if successful, during the receipt of the funds from the state, does that affect the state aid ratio to the new merged district?
No, it does not. You get the, I mean, state aid ratios for districts are recalculated automatically every year. So that's going to happen whether you merge or not. Your aid ratio is going to change, not very much, but they change every year. And the receipt of this incentive money is not counted against your aid. No.
The incentive aid is set, that formula from 2006, 2007.
Right.
So that part of it doesn't change, but the annual fluctuations in aid are based on various factors that change every year.
Whether you merge or not. Right. Okay, one more, last chance. Comment, question? Okay. Observers, thank you for being here. We appreciate your interest. Committee members, good on you. This is a real service to your communities. We appreciate the work you're going to do for the next several months. We will see you again in Roscoe on April 26th. Tour at 5:15, business meeting at 6. That'll be about 2.5 hours because we're going to have 2 chunks of content to cover. So 6 to about 8:30 for your planning next time. Again, thank you for being here. I'll hang around if anybody wants to chat.
Thank you.
Oh, no, leave those. Oh, why didn't I say that? Leave them. I'll bring them back. Thank you. Put the ones up to that table. Oh, thank you very much.
Well, it's good to see you.
We're trying to figure out what the work
Hey, how are you? How are you?
I'm doing well.